Great. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. This is the October meeting of the Zoning Advisory Council, the code refresh, and I'm Preston Lloyd, the vice chair, subbing in as chair temporarily as Ms. Greenfield will be joining us in progress. And so to kick things off, we'll first do a call to order and roll call. So I'm just going to run down the list. If you're here in the room, please say present. Wayne Creedle. Benny Gates. Present. Thank you, Mr. Creedle. We will get to you virtually in just a moment. Thank you for letting us know that you're here. Let's see, Mr. Hart, Mr. Johannes, Mr. Mai, Mr. Menges. Here. Ms. Mullen.
Here.
Ms. Norrell. Ms. Overton.
Here.
Ms. Peachin. Mr. Pitt.
Here.
Ms. Robertson. Mr. White. And Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. And we do have a few members who have requested virtual participation, including Mr. Creedle, Ms. Peachin, and Ms. Norrell. Excuse me, Dr. Creedle, I apologize. Dr. Creedle, would you please let us know briefly your reason for needing to join virtually, and then we'll vote on virtual participation.
Absolutely. My apologies for earlier and good afternoon. Currently, my home is being renovated, so I am out of the city today.
Thank you very much. We need a motion to authorize Dr. Creedle to participate virtually. Do we have that motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Dr. Creedle, you can participate virtually today. Our next motion will concern Ms. Peachin. Ms. Peachin, can you please unmute and state why you're requesting to participate virtually and where you'll be participating from today, please?
Hello, I am participating virtually because I'm having some HVAC work done on my house and I have to stay here while the people are here. It's sort of an emergency. So hopefully they will leave and then I will come to see you guys in person very soon.
Very good. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve Ms. Peachin's request to participate in the meeting virtually? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you. Next, we have Ms. Norrell. Ms. Norrell, Marianne's going to unmute your box. Great, unmuted. If you please let us know where you are and why you're requesting to participate virtually today.
Yes, I am on a work trip in Virginia Beach, preparing for a work trip, and so I will be participating virtually.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have a motion to authorize Ms. Norrell to participate virtually? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Ms. Norrell is authorized to participate virtually in the meeting today. Briefly, I'll run through the typical preamble. This is the advisory council that's been comprised as a subcommittee of the City Planning Commission for the purpose of advising the Planning Commission, the Department of Planning and Development Review, and the consultant team in the zoning ordinance revision process, which we refer to as the code refresh. The public will have an opportunity to speak during the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting today. And as a reminder to the members, please speak up so that online listeners can hear you, and kindly state your name when beginning your comments during this afternoon's conversation. Next on the agenda is approval of the September meeting notes. Hopefully the members have had an opportunity to review those notes, and I'd entertain a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those notes are approved. Next, we have the public comment session, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on today's agenda. We don't have a speaker's podium, but we do. Excuse me, we've reoriented a bit, so apologies. If each speaker could please come to the front of the room, identify themselves, and you'll have 3 minutes to offer your comments.
Get the impressive speaking podium. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Courtney. I'm a member of the First District. I don't normally come to these meetings, but I have been prompted to get involved, basically just because of the amount of feedback I have received from other people. Some of that feedback is at public community meetings. They wish to enter comments into the zoning map. And those people have been unable to do that online. I think part of that reason is very difficult to use on a portable device, which most people use to access that map. And in particular, residents of Southside may or may not have access to the technology necessary when those were the areas that were cited for being less than numerous participation for the recent. The other comment I wanted to make is I'm kind of disturbed about the amount of legal presence on this board. And I think it's a conflict of interest for those who have seats on this board to actively participate in zoning matters in front of council. Those are my only pieces of feedback at the moment, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public? Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Maria Duster, and I work at the Community Climate Collaborative, or C3. We're a local nonprofit working in Richmond to further climate action at the city level. I'm also a renter and a bus rider in the city. As global warming and the impacts of climate change worsen, we believe that code refresh is an opportunity for the city to re-envision its future and to foreground sustainability, housing affordability, and justice in its zoning decisions. And so I know that, the draft map comments have closed and all of that, but I just wanted to come today and kind of, again, center the importance of climate in a lot of these conversations. And I just wanted to briefly touch on two issues today. One is multimodal transit, and the other is zoning as a strategy for more inclusionary housing in the city. So first, we believe that zoning can be one of a couple of different ways to increase multimodal transit in the city. Zoning should encourage mixed-use neighborhoods and transit-oriented development along and near transit corridors, such as increased density of housing and businesses within walking distance of BRT stops, for example. We believe that centering multimodal transit and decreased reliance on cars reduces carbon emissions, and transportation is the leading source of Richmond's GHG emissions. It also reduces pollution and traffic and ensures that the needs of those who are unable to afford or access a car are prioritized in planning decisions. This might feel obvious to some folks, but, by allowing for mixed use zoning, along transit corridors, near bus routes, people of all abilities are able to access the services they need, ranging from grocery stores to medical care. We also see zoning as a strategy to include and to achieve more inclusionary housing in the city. Single-family zoning has long been used in Richmond and across the United States as a mechanism for segregating people along the lines of race and class by allowing only certain types of housing to be built in certain areas. For example, single-family homes. Those who cannot afford that housing type are immediately priced out. This is especially problematic in Richmond, where the majority of Richmond's low-income residents are also Black, Brown, and renters. These decisions pointedly limit housing choice and accessibility for certain groups. We strongly encourage the city at a minimum to allow for duplexes and an ADU across all residential districts. And we'd also encourage the city to explore more missing middle housing options in the West End and other historically exclusionary areas. Missing middle / medium density housing allows for multifamily properties that are still compatible in scale with single family and transitional neighborhoods. And these housing types can provide more affordable rental units and broaden the ability for people to live in areas with a high density of resources.
Thank you. Patrick, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Fitzpatrick. I'm a member of I live in the first district. I'm also the executive director of Housing Opportunities Made Equal. We're a housing justice organization. I had the pleasure of being invited to speak by the planning staff at one of the early sessions about a year ago. And I think it's helpful to be reminded of what's grounding this work here. We have an affordability crisis, but we also have a legacy of historic exclusionary zoning, rooted here and born here in Richmond and in Baltimore. And so this opportunity before you is to think about those dual missions and think about how do we provide more equitable access to housing throughout the whole city. That we don't put the burden of affordable housing just on the same communities that have historically faced and to carry the burdens for so many decades. And so I thank you for taking the time to do that. I echo the first speaker's comments. It was very hard to make comments. My wife and I sat down for like 10 minutes trying to figure out how to do it on our phones and gave up until we put up our laptop. More than 50% of the renters in the city, more than 50% of the residents in the city are renters. You don't have access to computers always to be able to make those comments. And so I urge this body to think about how do we make sure that we get the voice of those tenants who don't always have that equal access to providing comments in this very important way we think about how we do land use for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please let the record reflect that Mr. Gates has joined the commission. Any other speakers? Do you have any speakers on, excuse me, go. We do have one more speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Meg Lawrence, and I'm a resident of the 3rd District in Ginter Park. I wanted to note the discussion last month about the if a sidewalk should be required to go to the street in a neighborhood that had no public sidewalks to go from the house. And the thing I found so interesting and heartening about that discussion was the acknowledgement that one size does not fit all. And I have to say that a problem that I have had and I've heard expressed many times in many public meetings is so much of the first draft had one size fitting all. And it doesn't, you know, a 4-story building, a mixed-use 4-story building in one location could have use permissions that could be completely inappropriate in another location. I don't think that a gas station belongs in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Residential meaning both single family and multifamily. I guess form-based code is supposed to take care of that, but I'm not sure that you can create a form-based gas station or auto repair shop surrounded by residences. And so I would encourage everyone who's moving forward with the second draft to consider that these use permissions drastically sometimes need to be revised. I would hope that would happen. One size does not always fit all, from use permissions to types of zoning to transit routes. Not every transit route can be Broad Street, no matter how much people are trying to squeeze it in. Finally, I would like to say a suggestion that I've also heard from many people, and that is that the second draft staff needs to be talking to the community before the draft comes out. I realize you have comments coming out of your ears from the first draft, but there are issues about the process. And one part of that process was that the community did not really get involved until the draft was done. So everything was reactionary. Please come to the community before the second draft is published. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who have comments on anything not on the agenda this evening? Marianne, do we have anyone online? If you're online and desire to make public comment, would you please raise your hand so that we can? Don't see any hands raised. To you, Marianne?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, very good. That being the case, we're going to close the public comment and bring it back to the council for our agenda. And the first item is a council recap and meeting introduction. So Mary Ann, and delighted to be here in our new and renovated space with our new tech here. It looks good.
Yeah.
Well, if it works.
Thank you all, Mary Ann Pitts with the Planning Department. At our last meeting, we had the opportunity to start reviewing the development standards, looking at some of the bike parking standards, vehicle access, getting into the details. If you have additional comments that you would like to provide on some of those standards, if you could provide those in writing and email us those comments, and we can resend an electronic format if you want to leave comments on the document itself. Today, we have several special guests are joining us today. We have our Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development, Merrick Malone, is going to talk to us some about housing policy and how that relates to the work that we are doing. We also have Guy Roach, who is from GRTC, who is going to be talking about the plan for the North-South BRT, just giving a brief overview of what's going on with that project since we've had several questions come up in regards to that. So the first half of the meeting will be spent with our special guests that we're thankful are here. We will then start in on, the consultant team will be bringing us an update just on some of the numbers of comments that we've been receiving online in our electronic map in our document. And in addition, discussing some of the draft development standards. The transition standards were one thing we didn't get to at the last meeting, so they'll be bringing those for our review. And introducing a few other new standards regarding signage, landscaping. Again, these will be introduced to you for the first time. We're hoping you can take the opportunity to look at the document and again, provide us with comments in writing. We close the comment period September 28th. You'll hear about the numerous comments we've received on the online map. In addition, we have about 350 emails that I'm currently going through, and I'll send you in hopefully a format that'll be easy for you to group and absorb all the different comments that we're receiving. Right now, we're taking all of that information, coalescing all that information, working internally with staff and the consultant team on preparing that second draft that we're bringing in the week before Thanksgiving in November is the timeline on that. And one other thing I did want to share last night at Planning Commission adopted a resolution to expand the number of people on this body up to 21. They'll be appointed by the chair, along in consultation with City Council to provide more representation. We have several districts that aren't represented at all on the council. So working with those districts and ones that have fewer representation, utilizing the list of applicants that had originally applied for to be a part of this body. So the goal is to have by the November meeting.
Appointed by the chair, as in Elizabeth, or the chair of the planning commission?
Elizabeth.
Emphasis on in consultation with City Council.
Right.
Elizabeth is not handpicking anyone.
That is what I have for you. Questions?
Can I ask a question? On that resolution you referred to, they talk about not the zoning advisory council, but something I never heard of, the zoning ordinance revision advisory committee. Is that what we used to be? It just got changed at some point?
I believe so. It's.
That is the legal terminology.
Okay.
City attorney asked us to use, but it is one and the same. It is this committee.
So the real, that's the real name of this committee you're saying? Or legally?
Resolution DBA zoning advisory council.
That's quite cool.
Easier to say.
Okay.
But the new members will be appointed in time.
For the November meeting.
Are there any updates as to like, have we lost any members, or then some people have not been seen in a while? I don't know if that's something that.
There's several people that have consistently not attended, other with work obligations. So we've lost several members. Representatives from 7th district, and representatives from the 4th district. Those are the two that we have no representation.
I will happily hand the chairing duties back to Ms. Greenfield.
Apologize. 95 was backed up. Thank you, Mary Ann, for the council recap and meeting introduction. At this time, I want to introduce Merrick Malone. Mr. Malone, there he is. Mr. Malone is the city's Director of Housing and Community Development. And we asked Mr. Malone to join us today to talk a little bit about the work that his department does, kind of in his thoughts on where zoning may play a role to assist the housing and community development. It's oftentimes comes up that we're concerned about the lack of affordable housing, displacement. So I asked Mr. Malone, as well as staff to join us to just talk to us a little bit about what we should be thinking about with the zoning advisory update with these topics in mind. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you. I relish this opportunity to be here. It's interesting because as I was sitting here, I was thinking about, I am a former deputy mayor of economic development for the District of Columbia in DC. We had to go through a comprehensive plan review every, I guess, whatever years. So I have had the experience of seeing what happens when you're doing a zoning refresh. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was stunned that the city had not had a zoning refresh since 1976. And when you think about that, I mean, there were things that were done, but I'm talking about a comprehensive zoning refresh. Just think about, that's almost 50 years. Think of all of the changes. Think of how much you all have changed in that period of time. And this city has evolved. And this is an opportunity to kind of align the zoning with the realities of what is going on in this vibrant city. All right. I mean, it has changed, but I won't use ills of the past, but some of the things that were done in the past are staying with us, which we need to resolve. Now, my job as Director of Housing Community Development is to, in fact, invest the city's resources to create a spectrum of housing along all income levels, to make it an inclusionary city. That is and I know that there's always tension and disagreement when you start talking about zoning. But, John Adams said something, he probably without Hamilton's indiscretion we'd never known who John Adams was. But the one thing he did say that sticks with me, facts are stubborn things. And we have an affordable housing crisis. Fact. Right? My job is to try, and my team's job is try to ameliorate that. And we use various tools. We create tools, incentives. We do things. In my previous experience, we have used mixed income, where we have done 80% market with 20% affordable. And there was no difference in the units. The amenities were market rate. The affordable units were able to access those. You had neighbors who didn't know they lived next door to a person who had affordable. It can be done, and it can be done smartly. We have to figure out our task. My task is to create more affordable housing at every income spectrum. It is not to hijack a neighborhood to change the character. You ever hear the expression, the same thing that make you laugh or make you cry? The very thing that makes Richmond attractive to others is the neighborhood, its history, the characteristics. What that has done has made this a very attractive city. From like 5 years, just think about it, 5 years ago, I have a conversation with people. I talk to people who have moved from New York, who have moved from Boston. They have moved from the DMV, and they said, we love Richmond. Now, what they've done, they've moved out of a high income, high cost of living, still viewing Richmond as affordable. So what that has done, it has created a lot of increase in our tax base. And as an economic development chief, you say, well, that's what you want. Let me go to the other conversation I had. America, I've lived in Richmond all my life. I raised my children in Richmond, all of that. And now if I had to buy my house back, I couldn't buy it back. So we have to focus on, my department, on not just production of affordable. We have to look at preservation. How do we retain people who have lived in this city all their lives, who want to remain in this city? But the increased values coming from, a lot of it coming from out new money coming from these areas that are like New Yorkers. One person I know personally said, look, sold my house in New York. I not only bought a beautiful home here, I put money in the bank. So I'm just saying, you're seeing a lot of that. That has put pressure on the market. So let me give you some examples. From August of 2020, the median sales price to this date has gone from $285,000 to $430,000 in 5 years. We have got to figure out how to come together and manage and create a zoning policy. Now, we do know that in other cities, Minnesota and Portland, as well as some others, they have expanded their zoning footprint to allow for additional housing, additional affordable housing. We have a lot of tools, but the biggest tool that will help to create the most will be this zoning modification. And that, again, I want to go back to this. Sometimes I'll drive through the city and I'll see signs, no density, across a field that I could probably build a hotel on, about 1,000 signs. At the same time, so I see that, but at the same time, I know that I'm looking at these neighborhoods. 59% of this city is zoned single family. Okay, so we know, but there are opportunities. We have incremental nodes of opportunity where we can add additional housing. We need to be able to look at, even in, I know people say, well, the majority of the opportunity is in the south side of the city. Let's talk about the zoning issues. Though I don't want to talk about exclusionary zoning from history, but the reason that it's available is because this is really what I call the last frontier, because it is where the cheapest amount of land is to buy right now to develop is in the south side. That doesn't mean that should be the exclusion of infill throughout the city where it makes sense. Let's be real. Every place it's not going to make sense to put additional density in places, but there are places and there are opportunities for us, and we need those. We talk about displacement. I talked about it earlier in talking to someone who says, I can't afford to stay in my own house and I have to make a decision. They can't even do generational wealth of passing it down and I think that's, but at the same time, when you look at some of the character of these cities, a lot of it, and as a former developer, I'm reformed, design plays such a great importance. I don't know if there are any architects on the board, but I have seen cool designs that are able to fit into various neighborhoods, and it doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. In order to solve the problem of affordability, we have to have every tool in our toolbox. We have to have subsidies. We have to provide performance grants that incentivize developers to build. We have to use every tool in that toolkit. And one of the big ones, and it's not just zoning. I mean, we got to look at the building codes. We have to look at how we streamline entitlement. We have to look at all of these things to be able to create affordability. And I will say that creating affordable housing is intentional. And what I mean by that is if there is not intentionality in creating affordable housing, the market will do what the market does. So I like to say this, there's no such thing as an affordable brick or a market rate brick. There is only the cost of bricks. And when a lender and investor comes in and says, and the market says that I'm supposed to sell this house at $100,000, but I'm trying to put somebody in it that can only afford $50,000. Where do you think that $50,000 delta comes from? Comes from the public sector. in some fashion or form, whether it's zoning entitlement, whether it's a direct subsidy, whether it's a performance grant, whether it's our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but somewhere that gap has to be filled. I would submit to you the biggest opportunity to increase our ability to produce affordable housing resides in what you all do with this zoning. And it's a balanced approach. It's not, we're going in to hijack a neighborhood. You know, it's funny. Affordable means different things to different people. As soon as some people hear the word affordable and say, oh, they're going to put public housing right next to my house. That's not the case. Affordable housing is how do you fill that gap? Anytime you fill that gap, whether it's at a 0% of AMI or 100% of AMI or 120% of AMI, there's some kind of subsidy that's involved. In Washington, D.C., and I'll use that example because that's where I was. Anytime we had a public land that was just, there was a requirement. If you were building housing, you had 80%, you had a 20% requirement of affordability. Okay, 20%. So of course, if I'm the developer, I want 80% of my market, and I've got to build it to market standards. And so our affordable housing, the affordable units get the benefit of so many things, including the amenities, the gym, the things of that nature. We didn't believe in poor doors. In other words, where you had a door you didn't know who lived next to you. You don't know whether they were subsidized or not. It can be done. But we have to look at the data and the facts, because what happens in these kind of discussions, we let emotions get in it. Then we go to our neutral corners without really understanding and thinking about the overall goal and objective is to have a balanced approach to create ranges of affordability without destroying a neighborhood or destroying the character of a neighborhood, which is what made Richmond so attractive in the first place. And we're behind. We're behind. I think what happened is that we kind of did a status quo because it was easy. But then we grew and we continue to grow. And when we want to talk about displacement, we always talk about in terms of, but there's levels of displacement. How about those of you who have children who graduate from college and want to come back and live close to mom and dad? Can they afford it? Could your children that you sent to school, UVA, Virginia, wherever you sent them, could they actually graduate and then come back and actually buy a home next to you? That's displacement in a lot of respects because they didn't have to go. We have great universities that these students want to stay. I'm just saying to you that we have tools and we're creating more tools, but the biggest and the best that will give us the biggest opportunity to expand housing at all levels is what you all decide to do here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Director Malone, could we pause just for a second, just in case any of the council or commission members have questions for you? I have a quick question, if that's okay. And then I see Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Menges.
No, yeah, go ahead.
You opened with, your role and the role of your department is, focusing on the production of affordable housing and preservation. And as you touched on, we hear often, whether it's in our discussions about what we're hearing from the consultants, what the community brings forward, displacement. And are there absent any state enabling legislation that says residents cannot be displaced? Are there programs that you have in your department now that the city is implementing to address displacement?
Well, it's interesting. Our Healthy Homes program, that addresses preservation. And just that what that is that we provide subsidies to that are eligible that would provide like roofs repairs, roof doors, windows, capital improvements that would allow people to remain in their homes. And at the same time, our elderly population could age in place.
With no artificial colors or flavors.
Sorry. Okay,
Apologies.
I'm not sure. But that's a program. Obviously, we have our eviction diversion program that we are working with and Right to Counsel. So those are the kind of programs that we have, then that we fund. We're getting ready to stand up probably natural affordable, natural occurring affordable housing for those multifamily units that were affordable, and we'd like to keep them affordable. So we're standing up that program so that if we're able to maintain affordability there, as opposed to that owner taking that property to market. So that's a program we're actually having to fund and stand up. But again, I think we're trying to minimize displacement as much as possible. And again, looking at programs to evolve. But again, and I think that's the reality of the situation. There will ultimately be displacement. I think it would be naive to suggest that it isn't. Our job is to try and minimize that. Because again, we want Richmond to be an inclusive city. And, you know, getting away from that experience of having been an exclusive city, we've now got to, it's evolved. Again, the align the realities of the zoning, since we're now doing a refresh, with the realities of what is happening in this city as we speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Comment question. So the elderly population is like one of the largest growing homeless populations in the country, which is pathetic for the United States of America, entire United States, it's not Richmond. Unfortunately, if you have an older person that moved in, like you said, from Boston, they're retiring and coming down here, and they're purchasing a home. And then they have some monies to extra money, but the people that were originally here, they don't have the same income levels. So when those prices go up, it pushes them out, like you said, with displacement. You're trying to minimize displacement, but you said the Healthy Homes Program, I can mention that for instance, in 2023, when you open that up, in 30 days, the money was gone. How is that helping a whole city with this many people? 30 days, all the money's gone for one program, and then there are people on waiting lists in 2024 and 2025 from 2023 that never even got any of the assistance, but they were on the list and they said they approved because they qualified, but there's no money there for them to get. So where's the money going to come from?
So here's the thing, and I'm like the loneliest monk. I'm straight, no chaser. We need more resources. We need more resources. I did tell you that affordable housing is intentional. It is intentional, and you have to intentionally fund it. I mean, again, and I'll say this, our mayor is very much focused on that. That wasn't always the case, that there was a focus on affordable housing. For instance, we have an affordable housing trust fund, which currently our CAO and the mayor is looking at how do you make that more robust and how do you create more funding for housing. And just to give you an example, our affordable housing trust in Richmond that's been in existence for, I think, probably about 9 years, 10 years maybe. Had been funded for 10 years. The funding for that in total of 10 years has been less than $10 million. I think the last time I checked, it was like at 9.9. As opposed to when I was in Washington, at one point it got up to close to $100 million. We used a dedicated source of and that's what we're trying to do, find a dedicated source of funding so that we're able to help create more units. To your point, we do need more resources to do that. The mayor just added another 2 million to that Healthy Homes program, 2 million in preservation. That hadn't happened. So we've added 2 million on that to be able to, and so we have to use that money to leverage as much private partnerships as we can. So in the reality is that, again, I'll go back to using that word intentional. We do need more resources because, and I said, we're running out of time because the market is moving and we have to be able to try to intervene so that we are able to keep a inclusive kind of neighborhood. City. And so, again, I'll get back to it. The work that you all are doing is very, very important to the future of this city.
We have a couple of questions. We'll do Charlie Menges, then Preston, then Charlie Wilson, and then
I don't
Damien.
have anything.
Okay.
So I assume you're familiar with this, but the Virginia Housing Commission issued a report, I think it was 2 years ago, on how you could promote housing construction through what they call local zoning preemption, upzoning. And the report, I won't take the time to read each of these, but the key takeaways from the report all indicate that the upzoning has a statistically insignificant effect on housing. And they were studying Minnesota and Oregon and California, and one or two other states. And so I think we all agree we need more housing in the city. We need more affordable housing in the city. But I have a hard time saying, well, zoning is the way to do it. Now, maybe it's a way to do some things, but there isn't a good track record from what I can see.
Zoning is just one aspect of total amount of tool that one uses. So I'm not saying it's everything. And if I did, I don't want you to misinterpret. It is a big part of helping to create additional space, but it certainly isn't the only thing. I mean, again, I named some of the tools that we use. I talked about design. I talked about using different housing types. I think you got to look at building codes, street. There are so many aspects of it, and zoning is just a part of it. And if I didn't convey that, I'm not saying it's the magic elixir, but it is certainly a major component of if we're going to be able to increase affordable housing in this city.
That was essentially the point I was going to ask, what do you see limitations with the ordinance and does it require other tools? And you've just answered, yes, it absolutely requires other tools. And I wonder if you could offer some context for this body on what you've seen as being the most successful tool outside of zoning that's within our toolbox today that is currently creating the greatest number of new units. And in your view, why has that specific tool been so successful?
I think it's clearly hands down, it's been the Affordable Housing Performance Grant. And that provides the incremental tax rebate to the developer that really over 15 to 30, over a 15-year period. I think that has been developed. It has really been helpful to us. The other thing is why it's such a great tool is that our development partners have to compete for low-income housing tax credits in the state. And when we are able to put that into their capital stack, it allows them to be more competitive instead of a project going to Stanton or some other place. Our tool, the zoning tool, our performance housing grant tool has been able to help do that. So I think without question, that's it. I think we're getting ready to also develop, as I told you, the model kind of that we use in DC to use that with our surplus properties that the city owns. That will be issuing RFPs very shortly for developers to come and develop these underperforming assets, put them back on the tax rolls and possibly create a fund out of that to continue producing housing and preserving housing.
Hold on, Benny. We'll get Damien real quick. And
No, you go ahead, Benny. I'm still kind of.
I'm wondering, is there some kind of quantitative figure of how many homes we're trying to preserve for the elderly? My mom's back there, she's 84. She didn't even ever put her house up for sale or anything, but she was just talking to, we have a friend that's in real estate and told her that she may think about considering. There was like 30 people that called her and all 30 of them gave her up. This is before pandemic. This is like pre-pandemic. So it's just like, she feels like they want to kill older people. Like they don't care about older people. They've neglected older people. And it's just like, they don't care anymore. Like this country has gotten to the point, well, maybe not this country, but she feels like the city has kind of pushed older people out to the side. And so, what is really being done to make them not feel that way? Because she doesn't deserve to feel like this. She's been here 3 generations and she's been here. She's raised her family. All her kids are RPS graduates. And I can go on the spiel with that, but that's neither here nor there. Why did she feel that way? I didn't make her feel that way, obviously. Something is making her feel that way. I'm not just saying it's just housing, but I think the whole system has collapsed and it's not taking care of our elderly. as it should.
Well, I will tell you this, our mayor, who obviously.
I like Mayor D, yeah.
Mayor D he is so committed to the very thing that you talked about. And commitment also means putting your resources behind the commitment. And he's really committed to doing that. And I think, again, I will always say this, is that Richmond was a little late to the party in terms of preparing for creating affordability. For whatever reason that was, it just didn't happen. And so when you look at now, we're trying to have real commitment of funds to the very thing you talked about. Not just housing, bricks and mortar, but also wraparound services. That's important to have. So, you know, I think about being the other jurisdictions, and Richmond, this is not unique to Richmond. There is a 7 million, I think it's a 7 million unit shortage of housing across the country. Right now, I think the deficit is 7 million. So I think there are a lot of cities that are grappling with this challenge. And we all try to talk about what are the best practices, who's doing what to show. So we are trying to solve a problem kind of nationally with the affordable crisis, because the affordable housing crisis is a national crisis.
Charlie.
Yeah, just while we're talking about commonly comes up, does supply affect price in the housing market generally? I'd be curious to see the report you're talking about, if it's talking about bona fide affordable through like deeply affordable programs, kind of like what we're talking about here, or just the overall housing price in general. Austin, Texas is anecdotally in a way, right? It's not a report, but anecdotally prices have gone down pretty substantially, and it's a direct function of vacancy. Like in 2021, they had only 4% vacancy in the housing market, and then the average price per a 2-bedroom peaked like then, and now vacancy is up at like basically 10%, which is pretty healthy as far as like housing economy goes. And prices have dropped in Austin like 20%. So that's not nothing, but I'd just be curious, like if we're gonna claim like there's a report saying this doesn't generate more affordable housing, I disagree with that personally. So.
Yeah, well, just the part of what I just glanced at the bullet points, and part of what it's saying is that, and with respect to Fort Lee and Minneapolis, that the rezoning didn't necessarily translate to more units. So it's the rezoning to more units to affordability. That's the cycle that we're hoping for here. But yeah, my question was around similar to what we're all saying here is, one of the things we're really grappling with in this process is the notion that, we're some of us here, some of the advocates of the approach that's being proposed here are saying that more units is going to create more affordability, right? But there's when people, particularly in lower income or middle income neighborhoods, see new units being built in their neighborhoods, those very units tend not to be affordable, right? If we're talking about market rate, like a new market rate housing, whether we're talking a special use permit for townhomes or for multifamily housing, from what I gather, people are perceiving the new construction that's being built via densification as being units that are not affordable. And the connection between that and the overall supply and demand effect that we're hoping to achieve to tamp down prices, market wide is difficult to convince people at times. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what your kind of responses to that.
I think that, again, we would have to be intentional to help subsidize those areas that are high, really in high density, or not high density, but are in single family, where you look at unit types where where duplexes, triplexes, those where it makes sense, though, not where it doesn't make sense, but to look at unit types, design again, and see how it. Now, what happens is, and I think if we're going to be able to do some of the infill in some of those higher price jurisdictions, and there are infill opportunities, I think it is going to require us to, as a city, to probably even invest in the help with that, to make that happen, to make, again, intentional, because if left to its own device, the market will, and if we're talking about having an inclusive city where everyone is throughout all 9 council districts, then it will take intentionality on our part to be able to do that. Because again, like I said, if left to its own devices, the market will do what the market does.
We have, Mr. Malone, I know that your schedule is tight, but we have 2 more questions from our ZAC members that are online. So if we can get those 2, and then I think you can tell that there's a lot of interest in what you do for the city, and you've really helped bring some good information and answer some questions that have come up. So it's not that I'm rushing you, but I want to keep the agenda moving. So I'm going to get Mary Ann.
Shorter than this, trust me.
I think we could probably keep you here all night, but I want to be mindful of your schedule as well. But if we could get Dr. Krettel and Maritza.
Should be able to unmute.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Malone, you've been very helpful today. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that it's important for us to consider several tools in our toolbox when it comes to zoning. And you mentioned the performance grant. Are there any other tools that you think that we should be mindful of while we're navigating this process that we can quickly notate?
Well, the Affordable Housing Trust, the Affordable Housing Performance Grant kind of came from us. Our DCA or Ebert used the state law when it was allowed to the EDA to use the EDA to be able to use it for affordable housing. And she crafted a program, probably the first of its kind in Virginia. But we have an Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think from a zoning standpoint, I think the issues are looking at different building types, new building types. I mean, you have to look at manufactured housing. You got to look at you have to look at even tiny homes development. There are certain that will require some zoning and entitlement changes. But again, think about the seniors, and then think about the young people and their ability. I mean, I'm old, so I had an opportunity to be able to purchase a home. It was a little different with my daughter, without daddy, but I look at it now and I could never, there's certain places I could never even think about living when I came out of school, even out of law school. I couldn't have thought about living. And so I'm just saying that the zoning piece is a part of it, but as you consider that, you also have to consider, as you're doing this, how do we streamline zoning? I mean, I think we have opportunities to do some by right in corridors, certain corridors you could do as a matter of right development. And it should be for affordable housing or some type of housing, because there are those opportunities. And that would be a big thing. That would be a big help. Again, having, there's some Midlothian, there's some corridors that we could really attract some if we just change the zoning. The other thing is we have to also make sure that the process that we put developers, and whether they're nonprofits or for-profits, is streamlined and is efficient as possible. I tell people all the time, money goes where it's treated best, meaning investment. And if it doesn't feel like it's treated well here, it'll go to Raleigh, it'll go to Charlotte. So those are the things that I think that this body has to consider.
Thank you. Maritza, did you have a question?
You might be in transit here now because I don't see her online.
Okay, I want to thank you for joining us and your time and expertise. And I can tell by the whole conversation, maybe get you back someday as we get further along.
All I'm saying, you all know the need we have. It's the weight is on you all to do what you have to do.
I just want to tell you one more thing. With my mom, they text, email, and call her about her home all the time. It's never been put up on the market, but this is what they do to elderly people, and it causes mental anguish and stress in them, and it's not fair to them. So make sure you tell Mayor D. I know he's a very caring person. I think he'll understand what I'm saying.
And he'd be so-
It's stressing me out because I have a lot of elderly people in my family now. So.
And unfortunately, that's not unusual with what's happening with this marketplace right now, really.
Thank you, sir. And we've been joined by Councilwoman Robertson, who has joined us online. So welcome, Councilwoman Robertson. As we move through the agenda, anytime you have a question or comment, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Did she question that? I don't see it on the raise. Okay. Oh, I think we technically need to vote on her. Okay. Do we need her to announce? Councilwoman Robertson, if you can hear us so that we can officially vote and have you allowed to participate virtually, if you could just let us know why you're logging in virtually.
Yes, can you hear me?
Can.
Okay, yes. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm operating from home and appreciate being in the meeting.
Thank you. I hope you feel better. Having saw you yesterday, I knew you were a little under the weather, so I'm sorry that it's not any better. If we could get a motion
To approve.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you for keeping me on track. So at this time, we'll ask our representatives from GRTC, Guy Roach and Joe Dillard, if you want to come forward. Thank you for being here. Like Mr. Malone, we asked you to come and join us to give us a little update on the north-south bus BRT route. We've heard often through our conversations here on the ZAC with the consultants and staff, as well as the public, that there's the potential for our north-south route, and we should be keeping that in mind as we look at some of the densities. But I think not everyone is fully aware of what the plans are. So if you can give us an update, we greatly appreciate it.
Happy to do so.
Thank you. Okay.
You have a presentation.
I'm just gonna share it from my computer, and if you could tell me when to go next, that would be.
Okay. Be a signal. Google my ear. Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Guy Roach. I'm a Capital Improvements Project Manager with GRTC, assisting in what you see here on the title slide here, the GRTC Pulse North-South BRT. So what this, if we can go to the next slide, we'll see what's in store with this presentation. We're going to give a brief description of the project for those who are unfamiliar with the ongoing efforts, a history of what we've done so far and what's to come. And then we're going to dive into the concept development of the design and our 2 rounds of public engagement and some of the concurrent efforts that are going along with the North-South BRT. Go to the next one. So just an overview of the North-South BRT route. It's going to be broken down into 2 phases. And for this evening and for the efforts that we're undergoing currently, we're going to focus on the first phase of phase 1, which stretches on the northern end from Brook Hill and Azalea Shopping Center down through downtown, across the river, and over to Stonebridge and Springline shopping centers across the border into Chesterfield County. We're going to zoom in here to the first phase that is primarily within the city of Richmond, with the exception of the end of line stations. On the northern end, we cross over into Henrico, and on the southern end, we cross over into Chesterfield. The route stretches approximately 12 miles through the heart of the city, crossing over the river with 16 station locations. 14 of those will be pairs of stations where the end of line stations will be a single station, similar to the Willow Lawn station. If you're familiar with our current east-west oriented pulse line. Then we'll dive into the history and the project schedule so far. This project builds on previous studies and projects that have identified a priority corridor. This stretches back as far as 2017, pretty much when our first BRT line opened up. And where we are today is working on phase one, and the project purpose is to advance the conceptual design and to complete the federally required environmental review process. In this phase one process, we've gone through a conceptual design that has included developing the preferred locations of dedicated lanes and stations. That process concluded in fall of 2024. And the final preferred concept for phase one is wrapping up now.
I'll pause for just a second. Are we going to get a copy of these slides? Because I know I'm having trouble reading the dates, and I can only imagine that some of our audiences as well. So are we going to get a copy so that we can post this online?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Following the completion of some of the phase one design process, project team will complete the required environmental review process, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, by summer of 2016. Full design of 2026. Years fly by. Full design of phase one will kick off in 2026 and conclude in 2028, when the phase one corridor will move into construction. And construction will, we're anticipating construction to be complete and for the North-South BRT phase one to open in 2031. Right, and we'll dive into how we made decisions for the conceptual design. Our process took into account the planning efforts mentioned in the previous slide, which factored demographics, the environment, city goals for multimodal connectivity, current transit ridership, employment opportunities, future development, among a myriad of other factors. So to get that all going in the right direction for the city of Richmond, we have some guiding design principles that we kept in mind as we move through these conceptual designs. We wanted to minimize impacts to property, the environment, historic resources, traffic, and parking, while we wanted to maximize transit ridership, equity, access to key destinations, multimodal connections, and operational efficiency. Then we'll dive into reviewing the public engagement efforts that have gone on so far and what's to come. From the beginning, our focus has been twofold: developing a realistic conceptual design, and two, communicating with the public and stakeholders. We have taken and will continue to take community input into consideration as the North-South BRT design process advances. Our engagement objectives were to inform and consult the public, providing the public and our stakeholder advisory committee with information about the project and the role of public feedback, all while inviting the public's opinion and feedback to help guide decision-making. We learned on our technical advisory committee to collaborate with us. We partnered with these technical stakeholders with representatives from the City of Richmond, RVA Rapid Transit, Plan RVA, Henrico and Chesterfield counties, and more. To weigh in on conceptual design decisions, leaning on their technical expertise and local knowledge, and to consider public feedback on outlining changes to the north-south BRT. Okay, go to next one here. So our public engagement so far, we've completed 2 rounds. First round was to introduce the phase 1 corridor alignment, just a draft alignment to throw on the wall, see how it sticks, and get some public comments on it so that we could make some alterations and come back for our second round to showcase those updated conceptual designs that were informed by public feedback in our first round. So diving into some details about the first round of public engagement. Our first round included more than 100 attendees at meetings we hosted as part of this first round of engagement. This, coupled with our engagement at multiple pop-up events, contributed to more than 600 touch points with the community. We appreciate the time and effort that the community put into this process and calculated that nearly 150 hours were invested by community members in this effort. The online survey had 189 participants, giving us more than 1,500 data points when this first phase of public engagement was complete. Okay, so some of the takeaways from this first round, these data points were vital as we analyzed public feedback to uncover key themes and establish community priorities, such as pedestrian and bicycle safety. There was an emphasis on controlling and decreasing vehicle speeds and providing opportunities through the conceptual design to calm traffic. Another theme was station accessibility and connectivity with the east-west pulse that we have today, including multiple recommendations to include an additional station at Broad Street to provide for easier connections to the east-west pulse. And then another theme that came up a lot was to preserve the existing preserve street trees along these corridors. This led to a concerted effort by GRTC to factor in the replacement of street trees into the overall project goals. So covering a little bit more about the first round, other community priorities uncovered through our analysis of round 1 engagement included the need to maintain heavily utilized on-street parking along the corridor, preservation of community character, providing accommodations for all users, and the community also had somewhat mixed opinions on preferences for curbside versus median dedicated lane and station locations, with some preferring these facilities being located in the median, while others preferred the curb. So after that first round of public engagement, we went back and updated the conceptual design to reflect that feedback. After the second round of engagement went through a conceptual design update process incorporating public feedback, land use context, additional analysis into traffic and parking impacts, and preservation of community character. Some of those corridor design changes include a fully separated median running segment on Midlothian Turnpike, curbside dedicated lanes and stations on the southern half of Chamberlain Avenue, shared parking / bus lanes on Lee Street and Jackson Ward to maintain highly utilized on-street parking. We made some station changes as well, including moving the northern end of line from Azalea Avenue around to Brook Road to align with some of the county's pedestrian improvements that were in the pipeline. The southern terminus was also relocated to better align with where development pressures were and where that single station could be of most use for riders to access destinations at the end of line. Other design changes include new signals and vehicle movement prohibition at certain locations to increase safety and decrease congestion as well. So diving in a little bit more into the details of the second round of public engagement. We followed a similar structure for round 2 as we did with round 1, with pop-up events, as in-person meetings and online surveys. We hosted 170 stakeholders and community members. These plus our pop-up events led to more than 650 touch points with the community members, resulting in more than 170 hours invested by the community, which we're very grateful for. The online survey included an interactive map element that showcased various design features the community could click on to learn more about before answering a series of questions. Just over 300 people engaged with the survey, leading to more than 6,000 data points for our round 2 engagement analysis. Some of the takeaways from the second round of public engagement, community again emphasized the need for station safety and accessibility, with particular emphasis on creating safe environments to cross to median stations. There was also continued emphasis on replanting trees and preserving community character. So what's next for us? Round 3 engagement is in the planning stages as we speak. We're currently completing the NEPA requirements for federal funding. We're coordinating with related projects along the corridor as well, and moving the phase 1 corridor into preliminary engineering. This project does not happen in a vacuum. There is a lot going on in the city of Richmond, and we also have a few other projects that are trying to keep in mind as we balance all the transportation needs of the city. First off is our North-South BRT transit-oriented development study. It's a mouthful. It's a little bit different than the design effort going on that we just described in the previous few slides. What the TOD study is an effort by us to recognize that, yes, with transit investment comes development pressures, and there's really no getting around that. So we want to take this opportunity to work with stakeholders and the public at large to guide what that transit-oriented development looks like, so that the city and the residents have a stake in guiding transit-oriented development. The stations that we've selected to provide small area plans that can be sort of conceptual designs as to what this transit-oriented development looks like. We've selected the stations at Brook Road, Brooklyn Park Avenue, School Street, Broad Rock, Southside Plaza, and Eric Road. And you guys are interested in a little bit more public engagement on that. If you don't have enough, if you haven't had enough tonight, at 6 o'clock at Main Station, we do have another opportunity for public engagement for the TOD study specifically. I encourage you to take the pulse after today's meeting. We also are working on the downtown transfer station. You might be familiar with what we have currently between 8th and 7th Street, which is the open surface transit station with all the shelters out there. We are looking to provide a permanent location for a transfer station that provides a lot more amenities to make a transit station be comfortable and safe to utilize. Relocating the current downtown transfer station to the permanent location is a goal of this project. It also creates a mixed-use development opportunity to provide revenue to GRTC. And we're planning to release a report in May 2024. And that concludes everything I've got for you.
You said you were gonna release a report or you already did? You said May 2024.
You did.
We're in 2025. When the firelight's out.
Yep, no, we released a report in 2024, and there is more to come. Yes,
Okay.
my bad.
Okay.
Rich, thanks so much for the presentation. A lot of what you've described as capital that are being done by GRTC, and presumably a lot of those capital sources have been identified, secured. We now have a regional transportation authority. You drive a lot of capital investment off of that. But could you speak a little bit to fare box revenue and that situation, what you've seen with the Pulse corridor that currently exists since it began operation in 2018? And would it be a fair assumption on my part to assume that you're going to need some density to support new corridors that have high frequency transit, such as what you're now currently proposing to construct? And so there's going to need to be some alignment between zoning regulation and those investments to make sure that we have the fares to support that ongoing high frequency operation.
So fare revenue, I'll start with that. Currently, we're free. And looking to keep that as long as we can. Working with local stakeholders and partners to keep the funding necessary for fare free to continue as long as we can. I'm also seeing Joe Dillard coming on up.
Sorry, excuse
me. Team here.
How you doing, Chairman Greenfield? You called my name. Guy's a technical expert. He knows this whole project. I didn't want to get up while he was presenting and dance behind him. So
We're in for dancing.
okay, so right now we have a fare box revenue and projections in the past. We're talking about $5.6 to $8 million that we collect. Based on state funding and different programs, we were able to get grants and partnerships with the city of Richmond through support of our board. I think Councilwoman Robinson serves on our board. She did a lot of driving the change for having a regional aspect of answering that. Right now, you're going to see in the TOD studies and things that we have in the future, GRTC referred to this term as TAP, Transit Access Partnerships. So we're looking to keep fare free forever. And we're trying to look for different partners and things of that magnitude so that we don't have discussions with bringing fares back. Technically, right now, based on the merit system and what we have in state code through DRPT, ridership drives what we're supported by from the state. So because we have 12 million riders on average over a year and our growth has expanded so much, we're getting more money from the state at that level. So we're not hopefully thinking of expanding our route, basing it on fare revenue. So of course we have capital projects, the balloon elephant in the room, the project, the 12 miles of the phase one. And I thought I saw Meg here with Ginter Park. We've already shared, we're talking about $300 plus million. But as you already mentioned, we talk about high capacity transit. You see the Pulse outside, you would consider it a bus. But in our funding structure at the federal level, high capacity transit is comparable to light rail or your heavy rail system. So that's why it's a little bit more. But in our totality of having that discussion, we're not assuming it based on the fare revenue being able to support operation or capital. In operation, we're talking about $8 to $9 million. We're hopeful to go to the state legislator and try to do some type of advocacy where we can help with operational costs of expanding the route, especially in phase one. Future projects we haven't addressed yet. I don't know if you want to talk about the zoning part of it, but I definitely wanted to get up and talk about the fare.
Appreciate the detail. Thank you.
No problem.
No, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, good, Damien, and then Charlie.
Okay. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the decision? From what I understand, part of the, stroke process was to figure out, which bridge to cross and where to land in Southside. And with the route that was shown to come across, which is the 5th Street Bridge, I guess, right? And then
We go across the Manchester Bridge at 9th Street.
okay, yeah. Right, 9, that's what that says. And then so now so basically what results is one station at Commerce and then one at 16th. So why that, and rather than going across the other bridge there to the right, the Mayo Bridge, and then having another stop that's a little bit farther northeast into Manchester, where there's the heart of so much of that residential development?
We do have a report available on some of the earlier studies that were conducted to figure out the preferred corridor. There was a few options, as you mentioned, to use a multitude of different bridges to cross the river. In this instance, with the Mayo Island Bridge, there is the VDOT project in the pipeline to replace that bridge, and we really didn't want to contend with those efforts. And we stuck with the Manchester Bridge in this scenario, as far as some of the analysis that went into solidifying that. My memory is failing me as to those details in that first corridor study.
And guys being very generous in that comment, because we have been working closely with the city and Dorona, and they stressed Mayo Bridge a priority and not to compete with CBTA funds, et cetera. And that's also why we landed on the Manchester.
So a question that, if you can answer this, because I don't know what metric you use, but do you measure percentage of utilization of the buses? You know, they have so many seats or whatever, and you know, how many people use them percentage wise, what's available?
So as far as like ridership projections go, and Frank, feel free to tag in here. He's our, this is Frank Adarqua, our Director of Planning and Scheduling. Just pulling in the whole crew here.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we have ridership projections in our current study. Is that correct?
We haven't got into that stage yet. Yeah. But sorry, if you can repeat your question for me real quick.
So I was just wondering if you measure this, what percentage of utilization of the Pulse buses is there? I mean, the number of seats in there and the number of rides.
Existing Pulse, or what's
Well,
any projections for the North South?
Existing if you have projected, that'd be great too.
So for this study, we haven't done ridership projection yet, but in terms of existing ridership, DRTC has gone over its pre-COVID numbers. So there's high utilization on the system, I believe. As a fiscal year 25, we had recorded over 12 million.
Over what?
12 million riders. Yeah, annually.
So to try to break that down to,
Sorry, go ahead.
so to try to break that down to, we have extended our buses to have Arctics, right? So now you're talking about ridership, right? And I'm just talking about the Pulse. When you started the Pulse and when everyone was talking about, let's get the Pulse going, you were projecting maybe 4,000, 4,500 riders. We exceeded that in GRTC. The Pulse has more riders per day than the light rail in Norfolk. So when you see the Pulse now, you see an accordion because the ridership has exceeded the expectation when it first went out. We don't have the projections of what this would do, but if you're asking about current utilization, it supersedes the.
Yeah, I'm not asking so much about the gross utilization. What percentage of available seats does that represent?
So
however you measure.
They had to buy bigger buses because.
Yeah,
buses
40 now. So we had a 40-foot bus and now it's a 60. So
we exceeded the capacity of our 40-foot buses, especially if you're picking it up downtown here at the peak hours, PM hours especially. You'll have instances where bus arrives, it's full, stuffed to the gills. You gotta wait for the next bus. It is.
I've experienced that, for the record.
I've experienced that as well.
It's led to us, as Joe has mentioned, upgrading some of our buses that are running the Pulse line to 60-foot articulated buses, just to try and meet that capacity.
Right. How many does a 40-foot bus hold compared to a 60-foot?
You're looking at 40-footer seat wise, probably looking at 35 to 37 people. But see, and I was trying to, if we can take a step back to Joe's question, we have what we call ratio capacity. If you have 35 seats on a bus, right? Once you have that, every single person in a seat, that is not considered full, because for a local bus system, you have what we call attendees. So GRTC, we have a standard where, you know, you have a 1.2% load. So it means that for the seats to be filled up, you can have 20 more extra people to kind of stand in. But also just want to take a step back real quick. This polls or the BRT is a different concept compared to the local bus. So when you ask that question, what percentage of our seats is available, it's kind of difficult to answer that question directly because you are looking at two different concepts. From a popularity standpoint, the BRT system is our number one ridership bus because of how it runs. Because during the peak period, during peak morning and afternoon periods, it comes every 10 minutes. Compared to the other local buses that some of them have headways of about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. This is every 10 minutes because the concept is different.
So we're getting a little bit behind on the agenda, and I know that Maritza has a question. It looks like Benny has another question. I had a quick one. I think ridership is incredibly important, but you know, part of the reason I'm coming here is we're looking at, as this group is discussing with the consultants and staff, proposals in the zoning ordinance for densities associated with transit. Wanted to have a better idea of what GRTC's plans were. So just bear with us as we get through some of these questions. So Maritza and then Benny.
Mine is directly related to that. So, great. I didn't know about the TOD studies until now. And so, like, how are they being funded? Who's running the process? Like, who's part of it? And like, what do you hope to yield with the TOD studies?
I don't know.
I can pause real quickly, and maybe this is a better question I want to tag on to that for staff, because when the Broad Street BRT was put in, the city actually led a TOD working group. I was a part of it. Marisa, maybe Jennifer, a very long time ago, to guide the overlay and the zoning that exists today. I know you said you have a working technical group with the city, but what is the coordination as the city is looking at major zoning overhaul and you're doing a TOD study? I mean, how, kind of piggybacking on what you're asking.
I guess it's a little bit of a leading question because like GRTC doesn't control any of the land and it doesn't control any of the legislation that could enable any of the TOD in those areas. So like, in some ways, if it could just be like an interesting grad school project, not to diminish it, but I'm just like, people might think that it has more power than it actually may end up having. So I just want to know like what the intention is and how it's structured to create the plan.
Yeah.
So the second part of your question.
Yeah.
We've been working with Marion's group, the city, pretty much directly, because the funding for that TOD project was awarded to GRTC and the city of Richmond to undertake that TOD's study.
By who?
Sorry.
From who? The state or the?
Yeah, the federal government, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rita, I think you wrote the grant application.
Oh, that one. Oh.
Here it is. So that.
I want to have comments. So first of all, thank you for trying to bridge everything south side, because I live on the south side. Even though I don't typically use a bus, I would probably take it because I did take the Pulse trip to go to the Cheesecake Factory just to see I didn't have to drive and deal with traffic. And it was pretty cool. I had a whole day, didn't have anything else to do. So I took the Pulse on both ends, went down to Rocket Landing, chilled out there for a while. So it was just a really nice thing. I didn't have to pay anything for that, which is really here. So thank you, because when I lived in Baltimore with the light rail, like you said, the light rail was more dangerous to me. I feel like with the Pulse, whatever safety features you put in place, even though it's in the center of Broad Street, it feels a lot safer than when I was going on the light rail. Because the light rail, I thought I was gonna die, especially at nighttime, and it felt like, I don't know, that's just how I felt. I didn't really like the light rail. I didn't really like the buses because the crowds that were on the buses were kind of like sketchy. So that's the only reason I like that. I'd rather drive, but just the parking down in Baltimore in the harbor is just ridiculous. It's like always got a ticket or got a boot on your car and all this crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to say about the fares that were free, before the late House Rep Keachin passed away, we had a conversation about things I was telling him we used to do riding the bus in the city. We didn't have money, so I really like the concept. If it stays free for the people that really can't afford it. I did a lot of activities in school. Back in the day, we used to have a really thick piece of paper that went in as the, we could tear it in half and then feed it into the machine on one side so the bus driver could see that side. The other side was blank, just to get back and forth to where we had to go. Or we would sneak in the back door when the door opened in the back. When people would get off, we would crawl in and come back and sit on the bus. This is what we were doing. And I was a good student. Like, so I'm just saying, like, I was doing things that I would not have done if I didn't need to get across the north side to some event or some game or whatever I had to get to. So I love the whole fair. If it's able to be funded, whatever we can do as a community, I'm not talking about just the zoning council, but as a community, keep it free, because I think that's a good concept. Transportation, public, yeah, it's cuts back on the environment with gas, less cars, a whole lot of good things that come from when people use public transportation. So kudos.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? I have one quick one before you go. Sure. You mentioned earlier that it was an effort to preserve street trees, but then later on you said you were factoring in replacement. And if I could just leave you with any words, preserving the trees is something that's been very important that we've been hearing in this body from the public as we look at zoning. And there's a very big difference between preserving and then factoring in replacement. And we're actually going to talk later today about tree canopy. And so again, I know you said there's a technical group, the city is at the table, but as this body, the consultants and staff are looking at tree canopy provisions of this ordinance, I hope that you'll keep in mind not just the replacement, but the preservation, because I think that's really important. We're definitely hearing that as a body.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing as part of this study is a complete tree impact assessment. We've had consultant go out there to tag the trees to look at the health of the trees and all that, right? So as part of the project, some of the trees are going to be impacted, but the numbers that we're putting back for those are twice that number. And you can find our FAQ little flyer online on the GRITC website that has, it kind of talks about generally some of the basic questions that we have regarding the project, and then the trees are in there, so you can find a lot of information on that. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you. This has been very informative. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Great. Got a slightly off schedule. There any comments or questions from the group on the two presentations before I move over to our consultant? All right, Renee Bieberstein, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I failed to remind folks that when we're talking, please project and announce your name. I've already been asked by someone who's speaking, so we could just remember as council advisory members to say who we are before we ask questions. That would be great. Hey, Renee, it's all you.
All right, thank you so much. Just to confirm you're able to hear what I'm saying right now?
We can.
Okay, great. Okay, let me share my screen. I'll be with you in a sec. All right, so, and you can see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Great, okay. So we just have a short presentation for you today, which I think we can fit into the remaining time. So we're going to be going over the online comments, just giving you a bit of a high-level summary of them. We'll go into more detail next time. Then having a continued discussion of the draft development standards that you've already received, particularly focusing on the transition standards. And then we'll be presenting some additional draft development standards for discussion next time. Okay, so on the online comments initially here. So we shared, I think last time, a slightly older version of this with you. So this is the final kind of summary of the online comments, which as was said, they closed on September 28th. So at the end, we got 2,105 comments on the map, plus 1,686 replies to those comments. That includes comments that were uploaded from post-its at the open house. They were uploaded by staff afterwards. Of those, we have 620 unique commenters. That's the online comments. The open house comments were all uploaded anonymously. Top 5 neighborhoods that we got the most comments from were the Fan, Ginter Park, the Museum District, Oregon Hill, and Northern Barton Heights. There's about 25 neighborhoods that we got no comments from. particularly concentrated in the far south of the city. Unfortunately, however, it's a little bit better than the previous update that we gave you in September, when there were 38 neighborhoods with no comments. And I would just say some of those neighborhoods probably have a very low population, or may even have no population, the way that neighborhoods are they're defined in Richmond. So we do have representation, I would say, from most of the city. It's a little bit weaker in the far south, but good representation from the north, west, east, and at least the near south on the map. In addition to the map comments, there were 427 comments in the draft documents. Those are the documents that were up on Conveo, the draft standards and uses and rules of interpretation. And the sort of the top themes that we heard here, and of course there were many different comments in all different directions, but just at a very high level, some of the top themes that we heard relevant to today's conversation earlier today: prioritizing options for affordable housing. A lot of interest in trying to look for ways to make housing more affordable, looking for ways that zoning could incentivize or can create new options for affordable housing. Considering infrastructure capacity when allowing increased density. There was some fear that, with the kind of upzoning or the increased density in some areas, does Richmond's have the infrastructure to handle that, whether in terms of water or sewer or transit or roads, et cetera. So that's something that we'll consider. Promoting more mixed-use development in certain parts of the city to improve walkability. There was interest in having that sort of mix of uses, and at least in certain neighborhoods in the city, that make them more vital and interesting and more walkable. And the last part here, these are two essentially contradictory comments, but looking at reevaluating or asking us to reevaluate zoning on mixed-use corridors to ensure compatibility with surroundings. So some people felt like some of the corridor zoning was too intense, and the transition down to the surrounding areas would be too steep. That relates to the conversation we're just about to have today about transition. So we can, at least with you guys, address some more of that. We're certainly going to be reevaluating some of those specific zonings. And then on the other hand, we got people saying the opposite thing as well, saying that we should actually do more upzoning along mixed-use corridors to encourage transit-oriented development and get more density there. So just a small sampling. Over the next month, we're going to be working through all the comments in detail. So we're going to be reviewing and considering all of them individually, and coming up with a revised draft of the maps, the standards, use provisions, and the rules of interpretation. So all those materials that people are commenting on, that's going to be released for the November open houses, week of November 17th. And after that, there's going to be another online comment period similar to the last one, which will allow people to give a second round of review to all those maps and draft documents over the following period. And I think, as we said before, that will ultimately produce a sort of formal public review draft, which will also be subject to comment and review as well. So there's several more opportunities for input, and for people who wanted to give specific comments on the map, there will be a similar mechanism for giving comment after the November open houses. Any questions or comments about this summary?
We'll do Charlie Wilson first and then Charlie Benjes.
Charlie Wilson. Will there be, the last time there was a draft released, the zoning advisory council was given the first review of that, and we provided our comments publicly, and then the public had their overall review, which just ended. Are we doing a similar cadence this time?
I think because of the timing, we're not going to be able to go through all of that with you guys. I think we went through it the first time because it hadn't been presented anywhere, so it was a very first draft. So you guys got to make an input on it, and what will be presented next time will be an evolution of what you've already commented on, with some revision based on public comment. I think what we'll give you at the next ZAC, which will be just before the public meeting, we can highlight some of the changes that we're making and sort of give you some idea about what those changes will be. And then I think, it'll be for you guys to comment, along with the public, whether at those meetings or at the following ZAC or online.
Understood. Thank you.
Actually, two thoughts. One is I happen to notice that some comments were going to the planning commission, and the requirement, I think, was to send them to the planning department. Do those kind of comments get included in this? Anybody know?
I would direct that comment to staff. I don't know.
Those comments are the comments we have via email that I'm collating together. We have approximately 350 emails that have gone. So those are all those comments that came in through the Richmond 300 email box or came in directly to my email box or Kevin's email box. I'm working together in a PDF format. I can send to you all and organize so it's easy for you to look.
Okay, but what I'm asking, they didn't go that way. They went to the planning commission.
If they were emailed to our land use staff that distributes emails to the planning commission. She has forwarded it all to us to make sure it's included as a part of it.
Yeah, I don't know how many there were of that, but I saw some people send it to the planning commission on, not the address that was proposed, because that would have, I know, gone to you, but or to you, I don't know.
Yeah, so I also forwarded, so no matter where it went, we forward them to Mary Ann, so we have a singular collection point. I know we asked people to use that particular address, but it went to Mary Ann directly, me directly, a planning commissioner directly, it got included.
Great,
into that
okay.
batch.
The other point is, frankly, I'm just appalled by the summary of the comments today. Don't mention the fact, I know you got scores and scores of comments opposing duplexes in established single-family residential neighborhoods. That's not even mentioned here.
Via the emails that we've received many emails that have concerns about duplexes and accessory dwelling units, about infrastructure, about environmental concerns, and about more phased approach to rezoning. Those were probably most common that came on the emails. I know that Renee is summarizing some of the comments directly on the maps.
Yeah, so I'm just giving you like the very, very kind of top few. So yes, we got lots of comments on that, but we also got a lot of comments on other things. And as I said, there were thousands of comments total.
If I could follow up, Renee, and this is Elizabeth Greenfield, if you mean the top view, do you mean that these outweighed the comments? And I mean, on your initial review, these outweighed the comments on duplexes and ADUs?
In terms of numbers of comments, yes. In terms of, significance, no, not necessarily.
I mean numbers, not significant.
Yeah.
Was there an effort to?
And sorry, and I apologize. This is just a really short list. So I think what we're going to give you when we come back in November, once we've actually worked through all the comments, is we can give you a little bit more detail on them. So we can give you a longer list of themes for sure than this. This is really just like, very high level. Sorry, go ahead.
In doing it though, is there any effort being made to identify commenters not really being from Richmond, being activist YIMBYs from Arkansas or wherever?
Or vice versa.
Vice versa.
I don't think we asked people to identify themselves in the comments in the map. Did they always identify themselves correctly or whatnot? I'm not sure. So I think ultimately there's not a way to really vet everybody's identity. But I mean, we're not doing this as a kind of survey. So this is not, whoever gets the most comments in gets whatever they want, others don't. We're considering the comments.
This is Elizabeth. I certainly understand your question because I've seen some come in that I know for a fact they're not residents, but I don't want to overlook the fact that some organizations that may be commenting on behalf of city residents that they represent. So, but we know that there have been people abusing the system and putting in comments under false names. And unfortunately that we can't control that. But when it comes to organizations, they may be speaking for a group of city residents that I don't want to overlook.
I will say, in addition to the online maps where we've gotten tons of comments, we have a lot of emails coming from citizens and representing other groups that I'll be sharing with you as well. And Kevin and I have been at a lot of community meetings, civic associations, talking with people. So bringing in where we're hearing comments in person to validate some of the comments that we're seeing on them as well. So it's not just solely based on what these comments on the map as we work to amend the plan.
I think we have a question from a member online. You unmuted, Renee or Marianne?
Yes, you should be.
Dr. Creedle, I think you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. I have two. The first one, Renee, the report mentioned that there were 25 neighborhoods without that were not represented. My first question is, Since there has been a increase in engagement, you mentioned that there was over 30 plus neighborhoods that were not represented. Now it's about 25. So is there anything that's being done this time around to target those same neighborhoods that are on that list? That's my first question for you.
I mean, I think staff maybe can jump in on this as well. I think we've tried continuously through outreach efforts, pop-ups and so forth to target communities that were maybe less likely to be engaged in the online tools or in the public meetings. So we tried to reach out to people through events and so forth to try and encourage them to participate and to get their comment. I'm not sure if staff or others have anything else to add.
Several roundtable discussions that may not reflect the map with some of the communities that have been more difficult to engage with Southside, and also attended pop-up conversations that we at different events to get some more input and more knowledge. Right now, we're really currently, since we're working internally revising, we're really just any engagement is more just to let people know that this is going on and educate people who aren't a part of the process. So continuing that as we do some of the engagement, and as we go forward into our next phase, making sure we're continuing to work at where we find these holes. I'll say in terms of email responses, I feel like they might have filled in some of the gap in the 4th district that you might not see comments on the map. We've definitely received a lot of email comments from the 4th.
Okay. I guess a follow-up question would then be, is there a list of neighborhoods that consistently are not responding? And I believe that we had a conversation about finding ways to increase that engagement. Perhaps there are connections even in the room that could help with that. Are we still doing that?
Yes, I think those roundtable discussions have been focused a lot with the entities that the advisory council in one of the very first meetings suggested us to do some outreach on. So we can follow up with that and provide you a comprehensive list of who we've talked to at those meetings as well.
Sure. Okay. My last question would be, and just help me understand, if we're saying that neighborhoods are not represented, but then we have data that suggests that people have commented anonymously, what's the correlation between neighborhoods that are not represented and the anonymous comments? How do we reconcile that in our data? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been a little bit more clear about the comments. So that the comments are, when you see the comments in the map here, and I've talked about which neighborhoods there are comments on, these comments could be left by anybody. So you could leave a comment on a different neighborhood. So this is really, comments that are geographically specific on the map. So, I mean, typically people have the most to say about their own neighborhood, but you could leave a comment wherever you want. So we didn't ask people, where they're coming from. It was where you put your comment on the map, where you put that sticker or virtual sticker.
Okay, and then even when it comes to the open house post-its, is that the same correlation? When people come to these events, do they have to, or are we asking them to share their neighborhood, or?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if we've surveyed people on where they live at the open house events.
When they sign in on the sign-in sheet, there is a request for information on what neighborhoods, so we know what neighborhoods meeting are, but when you're putting up a specific comment, it's not asked.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so I guess, and then this is my last comment, I believe, but I'm wondering if we're doing the same thing over and over and we're not getting the result. I wonder, is there a different way that we need to encode the data in order to have that representation? I think I'm concerned for those that maybe don't list their neighborhood, or those who maybe are new to the city, they don't know their neighborhood, and then they're commenting and then it's not being represented, or it's not being coded. Curious as to just ways that we could find a better way, if that makes sense.
I think it's maybe not as much an issue with the data as that we have to keep on continually looking for new ways to engage with certain populations in our city to actually get more responsive. Ideally, as we expand this body, part of it is you all are here to also help us engage with the community. We're bringing on some of members from some of the districts where you see some gaps in where we're getting comments from as well.
Charlie Wilson here. I'm curious, when we say neighborhoods, from a data perspective, are we using like the city civic association neighborhood boundaries? Are we using like census? Like what defined a neighborhood? I'm curious because like some neighborhoods you might just be living somewhere and not think you're actually like a bona fide neighborhood. It's an interesting term, and I just want to know from a data perspective.
Yeah, so I think, correct me about the nomenclature about this, but the city has a sort of defined set of neighborhoods that it uses for kind of official purposes, that covers the whole city. And so, yeah, it's true. Some of those are, they may not align with like what people commonly think of being neighborhood boundaries, but this is sort of a, official outline of neighborhoods. And includes some things that there are some areas that really are non-populated, that are like industrial areas, or I think the VA hospital complex might be technically considered its own neighborhood, and some of the parks and the river and so forth. So a few of those are non-populated places.
The city has a neighborhoods layer used for like comparison of data over time. I even asked where it came from to our GIS person. He said it's been like that since he's been working here. So when they use the mapping, they're using that city's neighborhoods layer. When people come to meetings, they're self-selecting where they identify.
Yeah, so it's the gray outlines in this map.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit hard to see, but.
Very quick. This is Maritza. For everyone here, like the dark areas that you see are the areas that are the densest parts of the city, generally speaking. So it makes sense that that's more comments. So that's more people, more comments, more buildings, more comments. And then the second piece is a question. How long will the online comments be open? Like, are you looking to wrap up right before Christmas, or do you not know yet?
And Marianne, do you want to say what we're thinking so far? I think it may be still under discussion, but.
The week before Thanksgiving is when we're hoping to have the next version of the draft, and recognizing during the holidays, no matter when we release anything, it's going to be a horrible time. But going into January, looking at Kevin, whether we said end of January, mid-January.
Sometime in January. I think at least we're going to need the month of October to get our arms around comments and just get a sense of like what will be coming in a second draft. And so I think in November, we'll start to have some ideas about where that may be coalescing. But yeah, there's not a great time, but it will go into January. I just don't have a specific date in January, but it needs to go into January.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I just say one quick clarification, just based on some of the public comment on the difficulties using the commenting on your telephone. Is there any, I mean, I know that anybody can email in, which I'm sure you all say every time you go to a meeting, but is there any other means of commenting that you feel like might be helpful just to, yeah. If it's hard to comment on the.
You have, you created webinars on like how to comment too, right?
Right.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different means I think you guys are aware of. I mean, in addition to the map, there's also comments that can be made directly on the draft documents online. And then, as you said, there's emailing. And then there's also obviously attending the public meetings in person and leaving comments.
Right. No, I was just getting to we had a few comments in the public comment. About
Yeah. Yeah, I understand the technical challenges of using the map. It is a little bit of a tough one to use, especially on a small screen.
Like Jonathan with the Code Studio team has been in contact with the developers. So when there's been some like little issues and people have notified us of those, they've been able to make changes to them. So I think we can continue to try to work to make it easier to use. I don't know if it'll ever be simple on a phone to use, but
Just a quick comment. This is Elizabeth. Can we just note that that's the developers of the online portal and not
Yes, not property developers. Yeah. Yeah. the program developers of the map website have been quite helpful in working with us.
And the email address that people are to use is everywhere on the website. So if people have trouble, they can always email, I guess, is the best thing.
Great comments, questions, feedback. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any additional before we move into the next part of Renee's presentation? Hey, Renee, keep going.
Great. Okay, so next part here, we're going to talk about the transitions and screening standards, which you guys have had for a while. Thought this might be a contentious one. We certainly heard back from members of the public about things that are closely related to this, as I was kind of touching on before. I guess, first of all, any kind of questions of kind of clarification on these now that you've had a chance to look at them? Anything that you don't understand? No? Okay. And if not, I guess the next thing I was going to ask was, are there any districts missing that should be transitioned from or against? And I can flip over to this diagram here, this chart. So this was in your draft here. This is essentially the kind of operative matrix here that shows which combinations of zones, at least in the draft, require a transition standard and what that standard is. And I've just highlighted under RA, we've already heard back a lot from members of the community that they feel like there should be a transition when something more intensive comes up against an RA, particularly an RAA district, which is, fairly low intensity attached buildings. So when we circle back and make the next draft, we'll be likely adding a transition for that as well. But any other comments about any of these other combinations or anything that you think is missing?
So it'll help us explain what we're looking at here on this chart. So when you look at RA and MX, I see a bunch of dashes. What does that mean?
So when there's a dash, it means there's no transition standard. On the left-hand column there, you see the subject properties. So that's the development in question. If there's a new development that's happening, right? If that development abuts a zone in one of those other zones across the top, then you may be required to have a transition standard if it is in a combination that requires one. And there's 3 different transition standards in the draft that we shared. So in some situations, there's no transition needed. If you have, I don't know, an industrial area that's up against another industrial area, it doesn't really matter. And the same thing, perhaps if you have a very intensive mixed-use area up against another mixed-use area, doesn't matter. But if you have a mixed-use development up against, typically backing onto like a lower intensity residential neighborhood, like an RD area, then we feel like there should be a transition where you step down. And just to maybe jog your memory here, the transition standards that we shared, the types A, B, and C, here's what they are. So type C is sort of the most complicated, and that's usually where you have the most intensive new use coming up against the smaller ones. So if you have MX13, something like that, against an RD neighborhood, there's a requirement to do multiple steps as you get further up the building. So a step back and a second step back at a certain height. And then in addition to the actual stepping back, there's a setback requirement, which may be greater than the normal setback. And then there's a landscape screening standard as well.
Can I ask a question? Please. It's Charlie Mendes. I'm sorry, this is clear as mud to me. Let's just take RD, which is still single family detached, I think.
Yeah.
There's nothing listed here.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah, I was confused at first too. What I think it means is that if you're building a new RD, then you're not.
There's no transition required because that's a low intensity type, right?
You have this other stuff adjacent to an RD. That's where these transition requirements come into play.
So if you're building a building in MX13, which could be up to 13 stories, you're required to, and you're backing onto an RD neighborhood, you're required to follow transition style standard 3C.
Like,
Whereas if you're doing something else like a RX4 and you're backing onto an RD, you follow transition standard A.
So like, look at the type A diagram that he has. So if you're in an RD district and the property like right behind your house is RA, someone's going to, it's an empty lot, let's say, and they're gonna build a building. They have to follow the new building. Your house is the little grayed out house. The new building on the right has to follow those rules. So that means that within 15 feet from the back lot line, they can't build anything. And there has to be the B type of transition screen. And then they also have to follow all the other zoning rules of RA.
Correct. And so one of the implications of this, which I think I've mentioned before, is that in some cases, the maximum height of a building is determined by its lot depth, right? So realistically, even though the map might say 13 stories maximum height, in some cases, you might not actually be able to get up to 13 stories in terms of like what dimension of building you can get at a certain height once you put in these step backs. So we've tried to be, and I think we need to be a little bit more careful with the next round of mapping to be really clear that we don't mislead people where, you know, you might see a height on the map and actually you can't really achieve that because of the transition. We'll go back and sort of fix some of those, but generally speaking, there may be situations, where you can't maximize the zone's potential because of the transition requirement.
This is Charlie Wilson. I feel like type C is going to end up being the most important from it impacting the case on a case by case basis, the development that might occur. Type B and type A certainly important, but it doesn't go to the lengths of addressing the envelope of a building. With that, I'm wondering the two-step solution, I guess, if we're going to call it that, having two step backs. Anywhere in our previous discussions, did we talk about there being just a one-step step back, or where did you go? What brought you to two steps versus having a no step type A and type B and then a two-step type C? I'm just curious. I don't know if I have an opinion necessarily.
No, there's different approaches to it, and so it's not necessarily two steps. It depends on how tall your building is, right? So if you're only building a 5-story building, you're only the first step will kick in here. But if it's above 5 stories, then the second step kicks in, and that's really, it's about sort of preserving sky views and light and preventing and privacy and preventing overwhelming a low-rise residential neighborhood in behind. So it's, in other cases, other places do different things. Sometimes there's like a bulk plane, they call it, where there's like an imaginary 45-degree plane or something like that goes from the back property line, and you kind of have to step your building to fit under that. We find usually it's a little bit of a confusing way to do it, and it's a bit easier to kind of say, just you have to do a step back at a certain height. And so that's where the two step backs come from, is again, if you have a very tall building and you're against a low intensity area, we want to sort of to keep that building, at least the upper portions of that building, away from the low intensity neighborhood. The lower portions can come a bit closer, of course.
And just to clarify, you can set your whole building back 15 feet and go up 5 stories if you want to, or set your building back 30 feet and go all the way up past 5 stories.
That's
You
true.
don't
So yeah,
have
so if
to you don't have to step at all. You can just have your building be.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So if you have a huge lot and you just want to set it back, or set it, do a rear setback of 30 feet, then you don't have to do any stepping.
Just a comment on the step backs, is it looks like really pretty on plan, but with like building code and like staircases and elevators, it makes it incredibly difficult to do and very expensive. So doing this has like major impacts, especially if you're thinking about trying to have more affordable housing and like making LIHTC deals pencil. Like they wouldn't be able to do this.
Damien, did you have a?
Yeah, well, just remember that this is only called for in situations of
Like 6
kind of extreme differences between how one property is zoned and the next property is zoned, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of parcels that don't have that extreme transition from in zoning from one parcel to the next, and none of this applies. It's one thing to keep in mind. One of my questions is about MXU. Why does MXU not have any required transitions when all the other?
Yeah, I mean, we could put it in for consistency. It doesn't have required transitions because it doesn't actually abut any sensitive zones right now in terms of where it is on the map. So it's always abutting other MX areas.
Yeah, I assume that was why I would recommend still putting it in, just go, because one thing in the future, there could be zone changes that do create that abutting. I mean,
Yeah.
presumably that wouldn't be approved, but just to avoid confusion, I think it might make sense to go ahead and put a couple of Cs in there and move on,
Yeah.
And my other comment about all this is, we've heard a couple of different times, including one of the public speakers last week, or last month, talk about solar access. And that's something that, speaks to my heart as a planner / renewable energy advocate. But yeah, and for the most part, I think those concerns are often overblown in that, it's really the only situation in which solar access is going to be compromised is if you have a parcel across the street from you to the south that is built at a much higher, height, right? Because if we're talking north, east, west, that's not how the sun works, right? And there's going to be some degree of solar blockage to the east and west, but not one is going to have a significant effect on like the ability to generate electricity on your rooftop. But when there is but is there any way to kind of factor, not this isn't already too complicated, but is there a way to factor in this solar access in a situation where a development is occurring to the south of other existing, residences, that's going to create challenges for the ability of those existing residences to have solar on the roofs? Or is that just making this?
Well, I hear what you're saying. I think it's challenging to do because there's so many different variations, right? Like it's the streets don't necessarily run on direct, orthographic lines, and there's also changes when you have different times of year in terms of sunlight and so forth. I don't know, Colin, if you have any more thoughts about that.
No, it would be complicated to try and capture that nuance in every situation. We're welcome to, if you have any ideas about this, we're welcome to.
Yeah, really.
From me.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how it would work or where it would go, but something that says additional setbacks are required. And I'm going to finish this sentence and not sure if I actually believe it or not. Like something in which additional setbacks are required in the situation where there's a building proposed above 4 stories, let's say, to the south of existing single-family residences. I don't know how exactly that would slot in, but that would address that concern.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's other concerns other than sunlight. There's also, like I said, there's privacy and there's kind of sky view and just kind of visual, visual kind of transition. So, that there are I have seen other places that say if you're on the north side of the street, you have a different, transition standard than if you're on the south side. It is just, like I say, it's tough because there's a lot of variance, and Richmond has streets at, all different angles. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, Charlie Wilson here. If it helps think about it, if we're trying to simplify that question at all, I would imagine MX 13 might be the one where it actually starts to matter geometrically from a shadow casting standpoint. I'm not sure MX 8 geometrically. I don't know. It's hard to envision, right? But when you take the rise and run and the pitch of the sun, et cetera, things like that. That's a big question and it's an important question, I would think. But maybe if we're trying to focus that question, MX 13, where it abuts other residential districts, particularly those residential districts that are to the north of where MX 13 is mapped. Looking at the draft map, it's funny, it's actually almost by happenstance. There aren't, like Jackson Ward is a neighborhood where that might happen. But otherwise, a lot of the MX 13 that abuts residential districts, just very quickly looking at this, a lot of times the MX 13 is mostly to the north of those residential districts, just by happenstance. So anyway, we're just trying to help focus that because that's a big question. And I know people bring it up.
That's a good point. I mean, we already have these red rectangles here suggesting that, asking us if we think some additional transition requirements might be called for in certain situations, right? And I think in the spirit of this exercise of acknowledging that transitions are needed in some cases, your MX8, your MX 13, where about so that the bottom of that rectangle we're looking at, I think there might be some kind of setback called for there for all these reasons, which might also address some of that solar access concern that I mentioned. So taking that, where MX8, 13 abuts RA and putting a letter there.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Moving on. Keep going, Renee.
Okay, good. Okay. Maybe I'll just ask one more time briefly about the screening transition, the frontage screens or site element screens. That's the other part of this. I'm not sure if anybody has any comments about any of these standards. Or we could sort of quickly try and take you through them if you like.
This is Jennifer Mullen. I just had a quick question so I see on your typologies, you have the transition screen types.
Yeah.
But in the chart, it's just B without the types. I could be missing
where's the chart just this?
So you look at the bottom where it says B, wall fence B.
Oh, okay.
You see? Like, do you see how it says screening area?
Right, but where does it say which screen 1, 2, light or heavy, except in the
Oh,
So it says moderate and heavy screens here.
right, but
Because 1 or 2.
yeah, I'm just trying to tie it in. So on page 11, it's light screen 1, light screen 2, heavy screen 1, heavy screen 2.
You're trying to figure out how you know if it's 1 or 2 versus light or heavy.
I see moderate and heavy on the type. So I'm sure I'm missing something, but
yeah,
walk me through.
Flick back to slide 10 there, Renee. So if you look at type A, B, it says the transition screen and it says light. So, and then each one of those has that. So type B, it has transition screen, moderate and heavy. And then
so you're
C,
saying like transition 1 or 2, depending on your
yes.
problem.
Yeah.
So it's your choice.
So there's
you
options.
get to choose. So if you want to put a fence or a wall up, you can do screen 1. If you don't want to put a wall or fence up, you do screen 2.
Got it. A lot of times these transition areas might also be where there's power poles and other utilities above or below. And so like with the landscaping, there might be like Dominion Energy might be like, no, you can't put a tree there. How could you, or like the city might be like, no, you can't put a tree there because there's something underground.
Yeah.
How do we account for those utility conflicts and then these requirements?
So there is a standard in there right now that says if there's overhead utilities, you can replace a canopy tree with 2 understory trees that don't grow as high if there's overhead utilities. Clearly, if there's utilities in the ground, you wouldn't be able to put the trees in there, so you would get a waiver of some sort. Or maybe you just have to come up with an alternative approach.
It needs to, there should be something that's written there that says that, so that there's no need to go to like BZA or planning commission, just trees.
Yeah, understood.
Damian and then Charlie.
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly put what I've been trying to say into a specific recommendation. I think that, look at this rectangle of, RA as the abutting property, and then looking at the potential subject properties. I would recommend RX6 in A, MX6 in A, and MX8, 13 in B. That's giving a little bit of additional transition when 6-story and above zoning abuts RA.
Yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense.
We're definitely adding that.
This is Charlie Minges. This is a dumb question, but I don't know.
No questions, John.
Do we have these kind of regulations now?
Similar.
Yes.
Yes, similar. It's a little hard to understand your current regulations. You at least have the landscaping component. And to a certain degree, in some districts, you have the step back requirement. I know in TOD 13, there's a height step back requirement.
So what are these different requirements? Why are they an improvement over what we have in general? I mean, I don't mean.
Well, you've got too many options right now. And I would suggest it's not kind of comprehensive enough.
Charlie Wilson, the standards that currently exist speak to the current zoning districts, and we're retooling all of our zoning districts, so we need to update the standards to reflect the new, like we're already in there, I guess, so.
Yeah, but aside from that, I mean, it's different from, it's a screening requirement, different for an equivalent zoning district under the current zoning ordinance.
Maybe we could have staff jump in, Kevin or Mary, or Jennifer, Charlie, who knows the ordinances as well.
I think these are actually more than what is currently.
So I would say, one, there's probably more robustness to what's being proposed here than what we currently have. I would say secondly, I think a goal was, as this body has talked about, right, alternatives or flexibility is like right now you're kind of hemmed into like singular options. And so I think here, right, there's 2 ways to screen and at the end of the day have the same effectiveness, but like depending on the site, one may work better than the other. So it's being able to provide that option. But overall, I would say this is probably more than we currently have in our ordinance.
And it should be more because the new ordinance, if it's passed in some form similar to this, would have more opportunities for denser infill development, right? So under the current zoning, you can't build higher buildings in a lot of places. So there's not that concern about the impacts on the budding properties, and thus a more intensive transition and screening method is needed.
I would just piggyback on that. I think Damian raises a valid point because as we've heard concern about increased density, and we know on some level we will see increases somewhere because you can't make new land where I think folks would appreciate having the option, having the requirement that there's some sort of screening or buffer or appropriate transition between these potentially more intensive uses.
And I would say, I mean, it's no secret that I'm here as a person who supports densification generally, right? But I've heard public comments talking about specific neighborhoods, and I've looked at the maps as the people are talking, and I've seen the concern, right? And about an extreme transition from densities from one property to the other, right? And I think that this can help to address some of those concerns. satisfaction of everyone. But I think that that's the intent.
Would you say with your land use planning background, these are appropriate conversations to have as we're?
Well, I mean, I asked that we pull this topic out from last meeting and have more time to speak about it, because I do think it's important, and again, speaks to some of what I think are, valid concerns that we've heard expressed. Now, as to once we get into the kind of details, that's a bit above my pay grade, but seems to make sense.
I think as always, we would definitely invite you guys to mark up any of these drafts. So if you want to come back to the next meeting or before that and share us, specific comments on these, we'd be happy to receive that from you as well. Yeah, you're right that we were going to try and get to it last time, and then we were running out of time. So I wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about it.
And I think we're running out of time with this one, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's just when someone says it's more robust, people say, oh no, more regulation. But I think it's appropriate conversation to have if we're considering more intense uses or densities in certain areas of the city. This is a way to help transition and protect some of those community characters that we're hearing so much about.
This is Maritza. I think it would be helpful, and maybe it'd be better to do it with a project that's already been developed, or someone, instead of taking someone's land, but to diagram this on a real parcel. So that people can see okay, when you're talking about Chamberlain, we're talking about RX4, that abuts RDA. And this is how that could potentially develop. Just would help people understand, or even West Gray Street Association, hey, we're getting rid of TOD1, it's going to be replaced with this other thing. There's the screening. This is what that would practically look like on this.
I think that's a good idea. I think at the last public meeting, we actually did have kind of conceptual renderings of transitions, but they weren't this specific yet because we hadn't drafted these actual types. So I think when we go to the next public meeting, we can perhaps update those to.
Well, I guess what I mean is kind of being specific, and it gets tricky because it could be someone's property and they might get annoyed that you do it. So you might want to ask them, but being specific of a real place, because when it's just conceptual, it doesn't feel real.
And this is Jennifer Mellon too. It might be helpful I think piggybacking off of Charlie's comment, under B5 right now, that's a 5-story building, but the setback is much less than the 15 feet that the C buffer would provide. So I think maybe just a quick summary too, just so people can understand, because I think your point is, are we allowing more density and changing the standards, which may be less than what we have now, right? So I think that would be helpful to have a little summary of that.
And I know that you kind of paused this so we could have more conversation, and our presentations took the bulk of the meeting, but I think those presentations were important. We have 5 minutes left. Mary Ann, can we ensure that this will be primary on the next agenda and leave adequate time? And I think in between now and then, it'd be important to go back and mark this up.
Folks feel they have more to say about
the transition. Well, how about everything else?
That's what I'm saying. We have more.
Oh, those are the.
Well, so we're just presenting. We're not going to have a more discussion, but we just wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview of the new drafts that are being shared with you today. So maybe in the last 5 minutes, Colin could do that.
Maritza, did you have a question?
When it says placeholder on all of these, what does that mean? Is that just the image?
Just the image.
Okay, got it. Not the text.
So if you're basically talking about the signs, that's what we didn't get to, right?
Well,
So we're gonna move signs.
I want to make sure everyone's also comfortable with transition and screening, because this is a big one.
Right.
So.
I'm happy to circle back to transition and screening next time if there's more comments, if you need more time to digest it. So we can go back there.
Great, well then.
Colin, do you want to just give a quick highlight of
Just quickly, in your packet, you have 3 more sections to look at that we were hoping you would take away with you after this meeting and look at and review, and ideally if you could provide written comments. If not, we're going to set aside some time to discuss at our next meeting. So it's we're calling it landscaping, but really it's walls and fence standards. So how high can walls and fences be in a particular yard. We're calling it landscape design, so that's really just the landscaping planting standards. So when we talk about planting a canopy tree or shrub, we've got to have standards for what those should be or how big they should be when they get planted and when they grow. And then the big piece really is signs that we want you to look at and review. And then we also have outdoor lighting, some kind of basic standards just to prevent too much light on abutting properties as much as anything. So from hold on a second. So from a sign perspective, we've not tried to really change much with your current sign regulations. We've tried to add graphics and just make them easier to use. Clearly, you have a number of zoning districts that exist today, and in the proposed zoning, there's not as many districts, so we're combining a number of districts. So we clearly kind of have to make changes to certain districts in order to combine them. So there's two key tables, so two more matrices for you guys to look at. The first one here that's up on your screen is the kind of different types of signs that are allowed by zoning district. So there's a variety of signs that are allowed today: awning signs, canopy signs, projecting signs, wall signs, and they're organized by whether they go on a building or whether they're kind of standalone. So monument signs or bigger pylon signs. And then we have kind of special signs. So this matrix is telling you, based on your zoning district and your use, what sign type you get access to. So if you're in an MX district, you get a variety of signs. So you get a variety of building signs per the matrix. You get a variety of freestanding signs. You get a bracket sign and a monument sign, but you don't get a big pylon sign, for example. So there is individual tables for each sign type. So once you figure out what sign you want to build, so again, if you're in an MX district and you decide, hey, I want to build a wall sign, there's an individual page that you can go to using that cross-reference that will tell you all the specific requirements for a wall sign. So there's one other table that you should look at. So right before that is the table that allocates the amount of sign area you get for each district. And so this is like we're trying not to change significantly based on your today's rules. So again, I'll take the example of the mixed use district. So if you're in a mixed MX district, of all your building and freestanding signs combined, you get 2 square feet per linear foot of building frontage. So however much building frontage you have, and that's a defined thing and that's measurable, that's how much sign area you get, up to 200 square feet. So if you have 100 square feet, 100 feet of linear length of building frontage, that's how much you times that by 2, you get 200 square feet of sign area. And you can use that sign area for a variety of different signs, right? So it's kind of your choice. You can use it for awning signs, projecting signs, wall signs, and monument signs. And you can put as many signs in for the most part as you want until you meet that amount of sign area. So then if you, like I said earlier, if you decided that you would like to do a wall sign, you would go to the wall sign page, and that will tell you all the specific requirements for a wall sign. So there's a definition, there's general standards, there's the number of signs that you're allowed, there's the, just making sure that you understand there is a permitted sign area, so there's a cross-reference back, plus then there's individual dimensions for that specific sign type. So if you go to a monument sign, again, there's specific rules for monument sign. So if you're in an MX district and you're allowed to do a monument sign, it can't be higher than 8 feet, for example. And then there's a maximum area of 32 square feet. Yes.
Sorry.
Time.
Yeah, we're hitting time and we do have 2 quick questions. So
Go
My
ahead.
quick question is building frontage, if your building's at a, does your sign if it's at a corner, you get both sides, and does the sign have to be on the correlating side, or can your allotment be transferred all to one side?
Good question. You would get more signage if you're on a corner lot. Can you transfer it? I don't know the answer to that one, but we'll figure that
And
one
is
out for you.
Is it the length of the building on the street or the length of the lot line?
The length of building
Okay.
along the street.
I'm sure I'll have lots of comments. I love signs. I think on the roof signs, you should, right now, there's additional provisions because those need to be a lot bigger to be seen from the roof. So just to think about that component also.
And then, really quick, I do see the note, about internally or externally lit. In the context of downtown, I'm wondering if it might make sense to at least conditionally consider, permitting animated signage that you might see in, a more active, downtown, entertainment district, if you will.
That's more than ours now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a
So
thought.
we'll mark these up and then get them to you is the idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then we'll
that'd be
reserve
great.
some time at
Yeah,
the
so
next meeting to discuss.
Yeah,
So
so
then
I
next
think,
week, we're discussing this and the major changes to the zoning.
I
Is
think
there anything else?
I'm looking at
we're
Mary.
gonna-
Bring
we're gonna
dinner
be
and
presenting
stick
tree canopy next time as well, sorry.
and tree
Tree
canopy.
And we'll have some new members, so exciting times.
Could we, is there any way to get, this is Jennifer, to get information in advance so that we're,
Prepared?
Yeah, if Colin, Renee, Mary Ann, Kevin, the request is any information that we can get in advance of next meeting so that we can come prepared. Because it sounds like between signs, tree canopy, and revisions to the maps, we're gonna have a lot of information to discuss, and I have a feeling there'll be a lot of conversations. So the more further in advance we can get those, the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we tried to share the development standards with you in advance, so you have a chance to look at them. So for signs, for example, for tree canopy, we're gonna have to kind of present it and discuss it at that meeting, because we're just running out of time before the public meeting. But yeah, we'll share what we can. If we can share a draft before the meeting, we will do that.
Any last questions before we adjourn? Okay, just a reminder that the next meeting of the advisory council is November 12th, 4 p.m. here in the 5th floor conference room of City Hall. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
We want to consider having like. I'm not, there's so much to cover.
I've been asked.